Going live in 5, 4, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am apparently playing on my video preview or something because I can hear music repeating. Okay, so where is that music coming from? This is pretty weird. Now it stopped. Okay, fine. Ladies and gentlemen, rocky start. I'm actually going to start again, just for recording's sake. Starting in 5, 4, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Daily Code episode 11. Today we're diving into Aerys, which is a PHP framework and gives us an immediate benefit of being able to do WebSockets in PHP, which is pretty exciting. If you're new here, what I usually do is just play around with code, try and learn something, try and be helpful or useful or something entertaining at the very least. Tonight I'm hoping to do a slightly shorter stream because I did a long stream yesterday and I'm working on some fun writing stuff which I want to get back to. So for the moment, we're just going to dive into Aerys and see how far we get. I can put music back on now. Let me know in chat if the music, if the volume is good or not, because I don't usually stream with music playing, but I thought it might be more entertaining to do that now. Anyway, let's get stuck in here. So this is the library I'm talking about, Aerys, and it is as I mentioned, it's a PHP library for doing asynchronous stuff. I may not actually have mentioned that, but anyway, it's a PHP library for doing asynchronous stuff. It's built on top of generators used as coroutines in a very similar way to what Icicle is. Yes, thanks, Metanat. It's supposed to be a little bit quieter so that it doesn't drown me out. English today. Okay, so it's based on generators used as coroutines, similarly to Icicle, but a completely different project and different set of people. Aerys itself is not stable yet, but a few people have used it, and I've heard good things about it, and I want to experiment with it. So yesterday we did some pretty fun React.js stuff, and I actually want to recap because I've made a few changes to this which I think are interesting at the very least. So I want to look at what they are. The first is that I renamed the page list item, because remember we've got a page admin which gets all of the page objects, and then we've got and then for each page object we render a page component, and that page component can either be an editor or it can be a list item, like an item in a tabular list. So instead of page list item, I've renamed this to page view, just because I thought it was shorter and perhaps, I don't know, simpler than page list item. I've also changed the backend a little bit, so it's a little bit, slicker now. The constructor sets these page items. I've removed the segment field that I had before. It just got title and body and ID. And in the all method, which you may remember returns all of the page items for this data backend, I've extracted the methods to filter and to map. Now what these methods do is that on this data backend, I have an update method and I have a delete method, and these don't alter that initial pages array. They just add notes, things kind of like notes, which are, when you render this thing out, just don't render this page. And for the update, when you render this thing out, be sure to update these fields accordingly. So when we call all to get all the pages, we filter out any pages that are supposed to appear deleted, and we apply any updates that are supposed to apply as updates. So this isn't perhaps the most efficient way of doing this, but it's pretty quick to do as an example. We can do a backend in like 50 lines of code. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we use this in the page admin. Page admin's largely unchanged. We have methods for inserting, updating, and deleting, and this applies across the board. I don't think there's anything really significant that I'm doing here. Oh, I have added a way to check whether props will be updated. So now if we serve this, if we use our trusty npm serve and we open this in a browser, 127, 3000. If we open this in a browser and we go to examples, there's so much stuff in here. Okay, now we'll see if we edit something, the moment we change it, we get this asterisk here. And it's kind of not really valuable to us, but it's a good, it was an example that I could find to use this component will receive props, which is a magic method that React invokes on components when they're about to get new properties. So here we're just saying, okay, well, if the properties that we're about to get are different from the properties we already have, well then mark this as changed. And we use this further down in our render method. So, I mean, a simple example of how we could potentially use this component will receive props. The other interesting addition was that I have the isChanged method back here, but I'm also now using a magic method called shouldComponentUpdate. And this is really interesting because the default implementation of this always returns true. And so when React is trying to work out which components need to update based on changes to properties or to state, then it calls this method, and because it always returns true, it says, okay, well, this component should update. It tries to determine what those updates should be. But if we return false from this method, it'll just ignore the component in terms of trying to work out its updates. So if we know that the component doesn't need to update, well, then we can just return false, and it won't look for changes in this component or any of the components created in its render method, which is pretty useful. So here we can say, okay, if the properties have changed from the original properties, then update it. Otherwise, ignore it. We're not going to see a huge benefit at the scale that this code is at the moment because it's a small number of components. But when we get to really large collections of nested components or complex render methods, then this helps the performance get better and better. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to do that. Now, yesterday's stream was about React, and I don't really want to waffle on about React too much. I just wanted to point out some interesting stuff that we had done, or that I had done since the stream. But the purpose of this week is to dive into Aerys and to look at using WebSockets in PHP to try and get something really fast and something that can give this up till now fake CMS a bit of a dynamic aspect. Okay, so I thought today we could get started with Aerys and see how it goes. We're not going to have, at the end of this show today, we're not going to have a fully functional CMS system. We're probably not going to even have the PHP backend connected to this React frontend. What I want to do today is just get WebSockets working. Just look at the examples on the Aerys website and figure out how to spin up a server, figure out how to serve new connections. I'll make them from the browser console so that we can communicate back and forth. And we'll do some interesting page-like things, like we'll create an interface for inserting or updating or deleting or getting all the pages. But we won't actually connect that WebSocket to a backend and to the React frontend. I've gone ahead and I have required Aerys. As I said, there's no stable release of this yet, so you're going to have to set minimum stability to dev. And when you do that, I recommend you always do prefer stable true, because when you do minimum stability dev, whatever you require up here, all of the nested dependencies of that are going to, it's just going to install everything at the latest dev version it can, unless you specify at stable for these things. So if you do min stability dev, do prefer stable true, so that where possible, Composer will use stable releases for dependencies and nested dependencies. That's generally an okay thing to do, or recommended thing to do anyway. Okay, so I've already installed this, and it's downloaded a few things. These are the interesting things. These are the interesting packages we want to look at, the AMPHP packages. Now, before, when I looked at Icicle, I had some prior knowledge of that. I have never used AMPHP. I've looked at it briefly, but this is really the first time I'm digging into this. So, hopefully, I don't fumble around too much. To start a server, you just do php bin Aerys, it appears, and that will start something up at localhost. So, let's have a look here. Aerys looks for config files relative to the repo root. Okay, that's interesting. So Let's see. Is there an example of this config file? Yes, I think if we go into etc, no, nothing. Where's an example of this config? No, no, nothing there. Okay, well, we've got this installed in our vendor folder, so we can make, well, let's try and run it directly. We'll open up the second tab, php vendor bin Aerys. Okay. Localhost. Where's the example? Oh, right in the root, of course. Oh. Okay, so here's an example of configuration. Well,